Hi, I'm Frankie, and in this video, I'm going to show you how you can create this multi-agent workflow in Microsoft Foundry. The way it works is it's an orchestrator pattern, which means there's one agent that orchestrates which sub-agents that the initial query will go to, and that sub-agent will get some query, respond to it, and then it'll go back to the user accordingly. We're going to create every step to this workflow step by step, so follow along if you want to see how it's done. Now let's dive in. I'm in the Microsoft Foundry portal, which you can get to by going to ai.azure.com. Within this UI, I'm going to go up to the build section, and this is where I see my list of agents. There's also workflows. So this is what we're going to use. We're going to use the workflows UI within the Microsoft Foundry portal to create this multi-agent workflow. I actually already have the 5 agents that I plan to use for this. So I just want to briefly tell you about what these are and how they work. So there's the Orchestrator agent. This Orchestrator agent is the main agent that classifies information that comes in. We're going to show you a little bit of some tips and tricks in this. So in the instructions for this Orchestrator agent, the output is just going to be JSON. It's a structured JSON output that should only ever export or output the route that will go to the next agent. It will specify and classify what the next agent will be. I can come up to the parameters in this agent's playground. I can click the parameters for this agent, and I can see that the text format here is listed as JSON schema. That means the output must be JSON, and it must follow this specific JSON schema. If you want to understand how these specific outputs work, with whether it's you choose the default text, JSON object, or JSON schema, I created a video on this, and you can see a link to it here, just real quick to understand how these work. But basically, we're using a JSON schema here, and I've already inputted the specific JSON schema that I'll be using in this example. For this orchestrator, it will only be a route that comes back as orders, menu, complaints, hours, else. We can even see an example of how this works. What's on the menu? Obviously, I'm talking about a menu, so it should just come back with route menu, and it does. So this is what the output of my orchestrator agent is doing, so that my if then else statement within the workflow knows exactly which agent to route the question to. Additionally, within this agent, just another fun piece for you is it's helpful to share. If somebody is having a conversation, I want to make sure I'm prompting, I'm telling the agent how to behave if a user wants to ask a follow-up question so that it maintains its complete state. So this is my complete instructions for this bakery orchestrator. Just so you know, all the instructions for each of these agents, along with the YAML file for the overall workflow, will all be available for free within the Azure Innovation Station online community. You can join it for free. There's a link in the description. Real quick, I'll show you the orders agent. And the orders agent is just one of the other specialist agents. So there's the orders agent, the menu agent, the complaints agent, and the hours agent. And all these are for my fictional Frankie's Bakery company, which creates baked goods and provides bread, cookies, brownies to the nation or the world, depending on how well it is growing, this fictional bakery company that I have. Anyways, each specialist will have a structured JSON output as well. And I like the structured JSON output for these workflows because it helps the workflow be a little bit more structured and deterministic. And with the special Power FX language within the workflows itself, I'm able to extract the outputs from these agents and use them within my workflow. And I'll show you a little bit of how that works in a moment. But I also have a structured JSON schema for these. I will also include the just structured JSON schemas for each of these specialist agents in the code zip file within the Azure Innovation Station online community if you want to go and get those. But to see an example of what this might look like, I have an order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that I'm looking for. And so assuming that has been routed to this, then the specific type of structure I would get as a response from this agent would be this answer. Could you please provide a specific order ID for me to assist you further? And then in case I did want to add more context, more richness, more complexity to each of these agents, I've also added some of these things like order ID mentioned in case if the order ID actually was included, and then action required, true or false, to know if this agent should route further with another if then else statement. But these are just in here as placeholders to show how you could have a more complex workflow. The bakery menu and the bakery complaints and the bakery hours are all very similar. They all have their same structure as to information that they could output. They all output a specific answer as one of the structured items that they'll come back with. And that's important because of the way we extract information later for the workflows is that we're always going to extract the answer from each specialist so that the synthesizer agent knows how to give that answer from the specialist agent to the user. Finally, the bakery synthesizer agent is the final agent that will take whatever response comes from the specialist agent that is routed to by the orchestrator agent and the question originally from the user, and it will synthesize the output and the question to give a cohesive answer that is helpful to the user. And so this agent is only using the standard text output so that it makes sense to the user. It's not going to come back to the user in JSON. For all these models, I'm using the GPT-4o Mini. I think that's pretty good. In general, if you are building workflows, you always want to make sure your the workflow agent that's doing the classification is a small model. It doesn't need to be big, but then you can choose how all the other agents are structured based on their needs. Additionally, you can add other tools and knowledge to these other agents. For my example, I've just kept them all very simple as prompt agents where I've put information in code in the system prompt itself. So I'm in workflows now. I can see all the agents here and I can see all the workflows. So now let's open up and create our workflow. We'll start building this thing. So create blank workflow. And now I'm in the workflow UI where I can get started with when I go to create a new one. First, I gotta give it a name, bakery orchestrator. I really gotta figure out how to spell orchestrator. I rely too much on spell check these days. Orchestrator v2. All right, save that. And the first thing we're going to do is create a variable, set variable. And we'll call this local dot user message. So this is going to be our user message. That will go to our orchestrator agent. We'll call this set var user message. And its next node it's going to be going to is an agent. So the way this is structured here when you're building workflows is you'll have some sort of node, and the node then is going to have your specifications or parameters that it'll have on the right side. This set variable is the variable that we're going to create now from this set variable node. The value is the value that will actually exist in this set variable. I'm using this special PowerFX method or function here that creates a user message collection that an agent needs in order for an agent to see context in a conversation flowing that's happening. This PowerFX language is more geared towards people who have built low-code, no-code solutions, things like in Copilot Studio or the Power Platform, if you're familiar with those. It's not super easy to use PowerFX. You got to do a lot of trial and error and sometimes use Copilot or other AI tools to help you figure out what works or what doesn't when you're working with the Foundry workflow UI, but when you do get it to finally work, it's pretty fantastic. So we have our user message here. The system.lastMessage.text is the output of what the user actually sent, what the last piece of text was. And so this is going to be this special user collection object that's going to be created, which is what is required for agents as an input. The set ID is what is going to be named, what this node is going to be named in the YAML, so that it's all understandable as to what is actually happening in these steps. And then we're specifying what the next node is so that we have an idea of how this agent will work. So I'm going to save that. It automatically creates the agent node for us. I'll open this up. And now for this agent node, I'm going to select the agent I'm going to use. So the Bakery Orchestrator is the agent I'm going to use. I can already see the details of this agent if I want to learn more about how this is working. I see the more than node setting. The conversation context is how this is actually all together in one single context. You could have private contexts within separate conversations if you want to have agents interact with each other but not be in the overall conversation. If you want to keep context separate, I usually just keep everything all together because there's no reason not to. For the input message, this is now where we're going to put that variable that we just created, our user local.user message, because it's creating the object that we want for that agent. Allow multi-turn conversation. This is if you want to have multiple turns with a single agent within a workflow. This might be if you had a human in the loop scenario where you at one point had to have an approver decide if something was going to be approved or not, and they wanted to go back and forth with an agent before they decided to approve. So that would be a circumstance where you might use that. I'm not going to check that because I just want everything to flow through the whole workflow. And then if the user asks a follow-up question, it'll also go back through the full workflow. Include agent response as part of the workflow. If conversation ID property identifies as part of the workflow, this then means has no impact. This really only matters if you do have multiple different conversations. We're using the one conversation, so this doesn't matter. I'm just going to leave it as is. Save agent output message as, and so this is the actual output that is created from the agent. So if we want to understand how or take that output and use it as plain text later, we would create a variable here. Now, because we're using the structured JSON for each of the orchestrator and all the specialist agents, we're going to choose this second option, which is this save output JSON/object or JSON schema. And this is where we're going to create the actual variable that will go to the if then else statement to decide how to get routed. So we'll call this local orchestrator route. Actually, I'll just call it orchestrator response. And what's unique about the way we have structured JSON coming back, the structured JSON is going to get recognized by PowerFX and this output JSON schema, JSON object, JSON schema, and it's going to convert that route and then whatever the actual route is into a variable that we can use in our workflow. That variable will then show up under local.orchestrator response whatever the route is. And so that's why we're doing this. Orchestrator agent. Let's call this the orchestrator agent for the ID. And the next node is going to go to another set variable. Now this set variable is going to be the route. We're going to call this local.route. And then it'll be local.route. Now I could just put this in all the time, but I'm going to use this route to make things easier. I want to just have a variable that is just called route all throughout my agents rather than putting in the local.orchestrator response.route. I just think it's a little cleaner this way. And now this is going to go to an if then else. All right. At this point now, we're going to start splitting out to the specialist agents. So we need to create the conditions in which those agents are going to be routed to based on the classification. And then we have our edge case, which is if nothing happens, then we're just going to send a message to the user. The message that we'll send to the user is just a catch-all. It's just going to say that question is outside what I can help with at Frankie's Bakery. And it'll tell the user what it can help with, which is orders, complaints, store hours, which these are all our specialist agents and how they work. And then we won't specify a node for that. All right, for these others, I think we're going to have 4, let's see, menu, complaints, bakery, or I'm sorry, menu, complaints. What is the other one? So that's off the top of my head. Menu, orders, complaints, hours. All right. So this first one is going to go to local.route only if it's routed to orders. If orders. This will route to an agent. And so each of these will now be very similar, but it's going to route to the specific route necessary to classify to the agent. If menu. Gotta add the agent in there. Route to complaints. If complaints, complaints. I'm using my voice to text tool. It's called Wispr Flow. You can find a link to it in the description. It is an affiliate link. If you click it, it's the same price for you. Helpful for me. I appreciate it if you use that. No worries if not. Hours. Hours. Also to the agent. Okay. Now the way the if then else statement actually works I'm going to add something else to this to make it a little cleaner. So because these are all lowercase, I'm going to add a dot lower to this to make sure the response is always that lowercase for each one. So save that. All right, now let's add in our agents. So orders agent. Input message is going to be the original user question, the original user message. The output is going to be, we'll call it local specialist. Specialist response. And this actually we're going to save because we're going to make this the same response for each of the specialist agents. And you'll see why in a moment. And none of these will actually be routed to anything specific because we want them to all actually merge together. This one will also be user message. They're all actually going to be the same here. Local.specialist response. Menu agent. User message. Specialist response. Complaints agent. Hours agent. User message. Specialist response. Hours agent for the node. All right, so now it's a good time to give this a test as to where it's at right now. So I'm going to save this, and we're going to test this routing functionality. There is a little bit more we want to add, but for now, let's just see this working properly. All right, so I click the preview. I have this preview page now open to give this a test. I'm just going to say, I have an order that I need help with. And so let's see, getting a server error here. Let's refresh our page. Every once in a while, I see that. I have an order I need help with. All right, so it goes routes to the orders. I see the bakery order output. Okay, that's great. So that routed to the bakery orders. We're going to test each one real quick. What's on the menu? It routes to the menu. Fantastic. My cookies got smashed when I got them in the mail. So that should be a complaint. My voice to text tool helps me speed up the process of creating content and writing things down. What's the hours of the store? It's super helpful because I can speak so much faster than I can type. All right, so those all routed correctly. Fantastic. So now the outputs to all of these, you'll notice there's an answer for each one, right? We mentioned that before. And so now, because of the way the PowerFX pulls out the JSON responses, which is where we put the responses for each of those specialist agents, we're going to be able to mention the specialist response dot answer when we move on to our next step here. So now let's create another if then else condition, because this one's a little bit more unique now, is we don't want when there is, we only want there to be the synthesizer agent that responds when a specialist agent is actually in use. So when there is a catch-all that occurs, we don't want that to go to any synthesizer agent. We just want the user to get that response agent. So this is really just going to specify when there should not be, anytime there is a local.route that is anything other than else, then it will go through this. And as long as it's not else, then we'll set another variable here. And this variable is going to be the synthesizer input. Synthesizer input. We'll make this easy. Customer, I think we got to put in quotes actually. Customer question. So what I'm doing here is I'm crafting what the specific input is going to be so that it's easy for the synthesizer agent to get a prompt and know what to do, what exactly to synthesize. Local dot. Okay, now this is interesting. So I don't want to put local dot user message because that creates this message collection. I need a plain text version of the user's question. So I'm actually going to create another variable at the top here. And just like I have this user message, system.lastMessage.text, I'm just going to do the last message text, and I'm just going to call this local.question. System.lastMessageText question plain text. So now I can use that when I'm creating this variable. Customer question. Local question. And there is this special PowerFX function that allows me to just do a new line character. Kind of odd the way PowerFX works. It's not my preference or favorite thing, but I also come from more of a pro code background, so the low code, no code stuff in something like Copilot Studio is less familiar for me. Others might absolutely love it. And then the specialist answer is always going to be that local specialist response answer. Set specialist response. Specialist input. Actually, it's the synthesizer input. Synthesizer input. Alrighty. Can't have a space there. Local. Synthesizer input. And this will go to our synthesizer agent. Our input will be that synthesizer input. We got to make sure we put it in that, we wrap it in a user message. I could have done that in the last one, but to keep it cleaner, I'll put it here. If I didn't do that, then this would just be plain text and I would get an error. And then for this one, we are not going to specify either output because the output is just the default output to the user. Synthesizer agent. And then we're not going to specify an output node because this is the end. So if I save this, now let's give this a try. This should be our full workflow. We're going to give 2 different prompts here. What's on the menu? And it should route through the menu, give us information, synthesize the answer, and make it clean for the user. So here we see the bakery synthesizer. After getting information back, we can see the answer from the bakery menu and the actual synthesized information here. If I say something like, what are the store hours? We'll see that come through, route through the store hours. Also come through and is synthesized by the bakery synthesizer. Now let's ask it something totally unrelated. What's the weather like outside today? Should go through the else circumstance. We see it's routed to else, and we shouldn't get any type of synthesized answer. Instead, we just get that canned send message where it says, hey, all I can help you with is the order status, menus, complaints, store hours. So this is our overall workflow. Once you have this all set up, you can also see what it looks like in the YAML. If you are building it in code, you can create all the YAML and actually just copy and paste the YAML in here to use this. You want to start using this in code. There's the code option as well. If you want to publish this, you can publish it itself as a workflow app, which will be kind of this, this Microsoft Foundry agent that'll have its own ID, but as a workflow agent, which is a unique type of agent in Microsoft Foundry. You can also then publish it to M365 Copilot as an agent where it would work as its workflow, as a workflow agent. Within Microsoft M365 Copilot. You do require an M365 Copilot license to do that, but it's very helpful for you if you have them or your organization has them. And so this is how you can build workflows in the Microsoft Foundry UI. You can also build workflows using the Microsoft Agent Framework. And if you want, you can also build workflows using the Foundry SDK, but you'd have to set up some of the same orchestration logic. I hope you enjoyed learning how to build a workflow in the Microsoft Foundry UI. Again, if you want access to the agent instructions, the workflow YAML, the structured JSON schemas, you can get all of them in a zip file that's associated with the post that I make in the Azure Innovation Station online community about this video. So you can go to the link in the description to join the community, find a post on that video, and there should be a zip file, a zip folder associated there that you can download and get access to all that right there. So if this video was helpful for you, I'd appreciate if you liked the video and subscribe to this channel if you want to see more content like this. And if you have any questions, put them in the comments below. I answer every comment to help as many people as I can. As always, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.